Welcome to this Employability World Tour webinar focusing on job search in the United States today. My name is Floriane Lambert. I am in charge of international development within the EMLYON alumni team. This series of webinar is organized by EMLYON alumni departments, Delphine Rome and myself. Delphine is in charge of alumni career management. I will be your moderator today, and Delphine will take all your questions along the chat box and will be moderating the second part of this webinar, which will be dedicated to the Q&A session. So thank you again, everyone, for joining this new Employability World Tour session. If you do not know this type of webinar, they take place every other month, and they are part of a series of webinars aiming at learning the employment specificities in various countries and meeting EMLYON alumni and recruitment experts living and working in these countries. Today, I would like to warmly thank our speakers, Marie, Charline, Églantine, and Grégory. Three of them are graduated from EMLYON Alumni Business School, and they chose to live and work in the United States. They will share their expertise and knowledge of the American job market with you today. Just a quick note on the technical aspects of this webinar. So please, if you can turn on your camera so we can see you, it will be much nicer for our speakers. And we kindly ask you to stay on mute during the speaker presentation. You can use the chat box to ask your questions. And as mentioned before, there will be a Q&A session at the end of the webinar. This session is recorded so that it can be shared with the students and alumni who could not join the webinar today. I now turn to my colleague Delphine, who will share with you useful information about professional international projects. So Delphine, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you, Floriane. So I'm very delighted to introduce you this new Employability World Tour in the US, where I lived for 6 years, by the way. To continue the introduction, I wanted to draw your attention to the career resources available to alumni on our website, including WorkMaze and Going Global. I won't go into detail about these resources, but be aware that you can find country-specific guides, job offers, CV tips, and many other useful resources for your journey abroad. So you can really go on the website, you will receive the presentation, go to the link, and you will find so many resources. So just go and try them. Secondly, you can also register, maybe it's the next slide, to the next upcoming webinars on careers. There's one webinar in French, which is presented by Dominique Monnier, who has a wide experience abroad. It will be on Thursday, 28th March, and you will also you will be able to come as well to our next Employability World Tour webinar. So just you will go and go on the travel with us today, because you will be able to share experiences and ask your question to our alumni abroad and as well to law specialists. But you can also find other resources. So don't hesitate to go to the next to the website. Now I think we can start with our presentation and welcome our next speaker. Charline, if you want to introduce yourself, you're very welcome.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm super happy to be part of this alumni chat. So in a few words, I graduated in 2016 from Programme Grande École in EMLYON, and right after I graduated, I decided to move to New York. So it's been actually almost 8 years. I'm currently a Global Operation and Strategy Director at Dailymotion. And yes, it's been a wild and a beautiful journey in New York for 8 years. And I will give you more details in the following slides.
Thank you, Charlene. Marie?
Hi, everyone. It's really a pleasure to be here. I graduated from EMLYON in 2007 from the Programme Grande École as well. I started my career working in Paris. I worked for 4 years in change management consulting. Then I pivoted my career to executive search. So with that company, I transitioned to London. And 3 years later, I transitioned to the US. So my transition to the US, I would say, is quite unusual, and we've been extremely lucky because both my husband and I transferred internally within our respective company, and we were both sponsored by our companies and received separate L1 visas. Right before moving to the US, just to add to the luck that we had, we played the green card diversity lottery, and we were lucky enough to win. So a year and a half after moving to the US, we received our green cards. And a month after that, I transitioned to LinkedIn. So I've been working at LinkedIn since 2017. And in 2022, we became American citizens. So that's my journey. And I think I'm passing it over to Eglantine.
Yes, that's
Hello,
right.
everyone. So I'm not an alumni. I actually graduated from Sciences Po X. But I will be very happy to give you some tips and feedback on those visas. The path we just listened to is very exceptional. That's probably not the one you're going to be going towards. So what happened to me is that I initially worked at the European Commission, and then I joined my husband here, and I resumed my studies in the US. I did a full Juris Doctor. And then I worked as an immigration attorney, and then I opened my own practice. And I recently joined the law office of Claire de Gérin as their supervising attorney. So it's been an interesting career path. I am in Texas, so I'll be glad to answer questions on professional careers too if you have any issue on there. But I will talk to you more in details about some of your visa options.
Thank you, Eglantine. And Gregory.
Hi, everybody. Super excited to be with you today. We'll explain to you our different, different steps that we had in our careers and our personal lives, and what it means to live in the US. Personally, I graduated from EMLYON in 2007 with a master's degree in finance. After that, I spent 5 years in France, and I started my career in a bank for like 2 years, I would say. And then I joined a Big Four for 3 to 4 years. And then after that, I got the opportunity to move to the US, and I've been living in New York for 12 years now. And first I worked in a large media company for 9 years, and I joined another company in the luxury industry, which is Cartier, for now it's going to be 3 years almost, and working as a finance AVP. So that's pretty much in a nutshell, my career so far. The other thing I would like to highlight for you guys is since last year, with the help of 2 other alumni from EMLYON. If you can move to the next slide, yeah. So we are part of the EMLYON ambassador community in New York with Eva and Christophe. So we organized some events in New York. We gathered almost like 50 people every single time. So it's great to see that how people are motivated to join the community of EMLYON outside of France. Even if we're far from France, we still have this little family that stay with us down the road. So I think it's important to know that it exists. There's also like 2 other ambassadors in the Boston area. And again, if you're in New York and you have any question on what it means to live in New York, or if you have any questions on like resumes, interviews, anything that you want to know, feel free to reach out to any of us. We're more than happy to help you. Personally, I'm discussing with students on a regular basis, just to explain to them what it means to live in the US, and they have a lot of questions on how to prepare their interviews. So again, we're here to help. We exist, and let us know if you need anything.
Thank you very much, Gregory, and thank you for your involvement in the alumni network as an ambassador. It's very, very useful. So now we will start with a few information on the employment situation in the United States. So Marie is going to share this information.
All right. So I wanted to provide like an overview of the employment situation and trends that we're seeing in the US. So we're seeing the start of 2024 following very much the same patterns and trends as the second half of 2023, meaning that we're still seeing in the US really high interest rates, pretty low levels of GDP growth, pretty low unemployment, and also the decline in hiring rates. So the current US GDP projections are suggesting low to moderate levels of quarterly growth in the US throughout 2024. And we also anticipate further economic stabilization because inflation risks and interest rates are receding. So some industries in 2023, like the tech industry, took a bit of a hard hit in 2023. So we've seen a lot of companies like the Google, the Amazon, Microsoft of the world going through several rounds of layoffs. There's still hope that that trend might slow down and that GDP growth might start to pick up towards the second part of 2024, which would provide much better conditions for hiring in general. So from a hiring standpoint, 2023 was unexpectedly resilient here in the US, with hiring continuing to show signs of stabilization. So overall, while hiring was still down 9.9% in December of 2023, it was the smallest year-over-year decline that we've seen over the past 12 months. So unemployment also is remaining low in the US at around 3.7, 3.8%. So there's definitely signals that economic growth and the labor market are remaining pretty solid in the US. So per LinkedIn's chief economist, Karen Kimbrough, while we're still seeing like year-over-year decline in hiring, the rate of decline is slowing, which we can definitely take as a signal and as a sign of stabilization. So we might be looking at this period as some sort of rebalancing in the labor market, meaning that employers are hiring, but at a more cautious pace, and employees are staying put for longer than they would have done before. So what does that mean from job seekers? It's a very competitive market. And in fact, one of the trends that we've seen at LinkedIn is that between 2022 and 2023, for any person who is on the job market looking for a new job, they're typically submitting 18% more job applications than they would have done the year before. So it's harder to land a job. It takes time. It takes multiple applications. And what that means for talent acquisition professionals is that they're seeing an increased volume in applications. And that's also something I've noticed at LinkedIn. Like if I post a job, sometimes I post like a customer success job on LinkedIn. In 24 hours, I'm not joking, I can receive more than 1,000 applications. So it's a very, very competitive market. And I'm not suggesting that this is the case for every single job, but for some of the, for some jobs, some companies, this can very much be the case. Another trend that we're seeing, and obviously, so if you can come back to the previous slide, there's still very much interest for remote and hybrid jobs. So we have seen just in January of 2024, more than half of US job applicants apply to a remote or a hybrid job. That being said, we're seeing a trend since the end of 2022 where the number of jobs that are posted and offering that option of being remote or hybrid is trending down. So even though there's still a high demand for job seekers to have a job that is remote or hybrid, the number of these jobs on the platform is definitely trending down. And we are seeing a lot a few more companies that are offering less flexibility and are requiring more return to office. And finally, in terms of migrations and cities where, that people are leaving or people are joining. So during the pandemic, we've definitely seen an increased interest for some cities like Austin, Texas, Tampa Bay, Florida, Nashville, Tennessee, Dallas-Fort Worth, Denver in Colorado. So these cities are not trending down. We're seeing more people leaving these cities than joining. And interestingly, during the pandemic, we've definitely seen some large US metropolitan areas losing attraction, such as New York City, Los Angeles, and so on and so forth. These cities are now picking back up. So we're seeing an increase in the number of people who are joining these cities versus leaving. So Los Angeles is back on that list, Chicago, New York City, Las Vegas. So let's go to the next slide. So in terms of what's hot in the US market right now, what's most in demand? So number one, customer-facing roles continue to be a major presence on the current list of the most in-demand jobs overall. So many of these roles, such as retail salesperson, store manager, cashier, are explicitly in person. Confirming the trend that we're seeing in the US of bringing more people back in person. In terms of the most in-demand jobs, I'm sure this is not a surprise, and that's probably something we're seeing across many, many countries, but there's a shortage of talent in the healthcare industry right now since the pandemic. So having been in the staffing industry before, there was an incredible surge in nurses, obviously during the pandemic. And probably this trend was, of course, exacerbated because of the pandemic, but it's also driven by the aging population. So the demand is likely to continue rising over the next several years. And in fact, there was recently a report from OECD suggesting that healthcare and social assistant jobs are projecting to make up nearly half, so around 45% of all the new jobs created in the US by 2032, and we're expecting a comparable surge for Canada. From a skills standpoint, there's been some really interesting development in the past year and a half with the rise of AI, which has a huge impact on what skills are trending up or down. It's interesting because as organizations are understanding the full extent of what AI can do, they're also determining what it can't do. And what are those specific tasks that require the uniquely human skills that all businesses are going to need. So the top skill of the moment with the most notable surge in year-over-year demand is adaptability. It's like table stake. It's an indispensable skill that allows team and organizations to keep steady and drive maximum impact. And this skill will become even more important as the pace of change is only increasing. So since 2015, skills for role have on average changed like about 25%. But by 2030, it's expected that number will reach at least 65%. So, which is suggesting that there will be even more changes to the skills that we're expecting people to have. And interestingly, we estimate that about half of LinkedIn members, and we currently have more than 1 billion on the platform, have jobs that stand to be disrupted or augmented by AI. So overall communication, customer service, and leadership continue to be business critical skills in the age of AI, and other emergent skills like problem solving and research showcase truly the importance of upskilling and reskilling and adapting to a constantly changing world of work. So finally, I wanted to bring like a snapshot. If we look at the top 10 largest metropolitan areas in the US, and I added San Francisco because I think that's also one of the typical destinations of people moving from another countries. If you look at top employers, no surprise, the big bulk will be made out of the public sector and hospitals, like the Army, the Navy, like the Department of Education. There's a big shortage of teachers in the US. There are also other sectors that are picking back up, such as tech companies like Google, Amazon, Apple, and also banks and financial services, so such as JP Morgan Chase, Bank of America, Wells Fargo, Citibank. There are also some sectors that are staying pretty attractive, such as the aerospace and defense industry, the retail industry with Walmart, Target of the world, and telco as well. Interestingly for us, in terms of top fields of study that are still very attractive, business administration and management is still the #1. Finance is on the top 5 list, but also computer science, psychology, and computational science. From a skill standpoint, again, related to that, data analysis and analytical skills are pretty high on the list. Together with finance and sales management. So, if you wanted to make a career in sales or in finance, with some of these top employers, there could be some interesting spots there, and healthcare, of course. And some of the top titles, again, suggest that we're seeing a very large portion of owners, like teachers, probably nurses is not far on that list, but also manager level positions. So manager, president, chief executive officers. So that's it in terms of overall trends. I think now I am passing it over to Eglantine for
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Marie. And indeed, Eglantine is going to make a presentation on the immigration aspects of working in the United States.
Perfect. So I'm going to first do a disclaimer, which is a very American thing to do. And you'll get it from any attorneys around. So this presentation does not create an attorney-client relationship, and it does not provide legal advice. It is for general information purposes. You might find it funny, but if you've never been to the US and you get here, that's the kind of disclaimer or warning you're going to see on a lot of things. I tried to pick a few visa to focus on to give you a little bit more of in-depth information. But I think one of the most important things that I want to point out to start is that when you're looking at the visa for the US, you need to check whether there are appointments available to get a visa. And why am I saying that? Is because this summer, there's the Olympics in Paris, like generally. So the US consulate in Paris has already been blocking appointments. So as a trend, we're seeing appointments open for March 2025 right now for E2 visas. So then you need to, kind of plan that in your overall first point of approach to the US, it's getting a visa. And that might delay your project. So in terms of the first visa I wanted to focus on is the E2 visa, because it's a visa, it's great for French citizens because there is a treaty country between France and the US, which simplifies the process for a lot of people, a lot of positions. What happens is that you're going to have two kinds of visa. You're going to have the visa where you do an investment and you're going to kind of auto-petition yourself for coming and doing your own project in the US. And then you're going to have the E2 for employees. So that means that there is a company that can meet the treaty nationality requirements, meaning that dribble down the company in the US is owned by French citizens that are either in France or owned by or are on E2 visa in the US. So there's two concepts. Either you invest or you meet the nationality and you're coming to do either an executive, a managerial, or a specialized position. This is great. It's not available to every nationality. So always think about asking if you're interviewing around, if there might be a nationality that's available for the company, a prospective company to sponsor you. If you've gone through a bunch of interviews and you've nothing and you're an entrepreneur and you're like, I want to launch my own project, then the second side of it comes in and you can invest your money into your own company, into your own project in the US. Spend it, commit it, and then plan for growth in your project. The key on E2 visas, if you've looked at them, is that there's a marginality concept. So what the consulate wants to see when you come and present your project is that you have a real and operational company or you're really near to beginning your operations. and you are planning on hiring people in the US. That's a very big key. A lot of people get rejected at the consulate level because their plan was great, their investment was great, but they never plan on hiring anyone but themselves. And that doesn't fit the E2 treaty requirements. So that's the main thing I wanted to say. The E2 is a consular process based generally. So even if you were to come in the US under a different visa and then change status, if you want to travel internationally, you have to go to the consulate. And so it's generally a good idea to just stay on a consular process. Can you move to the next slide? So one other thing that's really important to remember is that certain visas are limited in time, more than others, and some are subject to lottery. So when we're talking to visa, there's no lottery. Currently, they're issued for 48 months, and you can enter for 2 years at a time. But for as long as you qualify for renewal, you can stay in the US for a long time. You can keep on renewing for as long as you're either managing your investment and growing your company, or you are in a qualifying position. That's available to you. The limit is that you have to have a treaty company that has a right nationality. So that was it for the in-depth of the E2. I'm going to move on to the L1. The L1 is generally more complicated to access and limited in time. There's no lottery, but basically you need to be working either in a specialized knowledge position abroad or as a manager abroad for 1 year full-time within the 3 years that precede your coming to work either in a specialized position or a managerial position in the US. So it means you have to have the work abroad, you have to have the offer of employment for the US, there needs to be a qualifying relationship between the two companies, and there's a maximum amount of time you can stay in the US before you're forced to be abroad. So that's 5 years for L1Bs, which is specialized employees, and 7 years for L1A for managers. So I wanted to point it out. If you don't have the nationality for the E2, but you've been working for a company in France, for example, and they're looking at developing their activities in the US, it might be an option for you to review with your company. I'm going to move on to the next one. Now, the H-1B visa is basically the visa that everybody has heard about. It is the visa for people who have a bachelor's degree and for a position that is a specialty occupation. So basically a job that requires a bachelor degree in a specific field for you to take the position. The big issue with those H-1Bs is that the applications, are really enterprise-centric. You have to register the company, you have to be selected at a lottery, there is a cap, so there's a maximum number they can give you, unless you fall under an exemption category, such as working for a higher institution of education. And so right now, the lottery is going to happen really soon. Registrations are ongoing. And they're generally for an entry into the position as of October 1st. So you always have kind of a distance between the time you ask for that visa and the time you can actually take the position if you're selected. I'm going to move on to the next one. O1 kind of gets you out of the issue of the cap. It's for people who have extraordinary ability or achievements in the field of science, arts, education, business, or athletics. What does that mean? It means that there's a series of criteria the government is going to look at to see if you kind of arrive towards the top of your field. And that means basically that you have to meet 3 of the criteria. Oftentimes, it's hard to get to an O1 where you're a recent graduate unless you are in research or in a field of really high interest to the US. Because you might need to document that you're paid at a really high level or that you have published work or contributed significantly to your field in a way that's beyond what you do for the company. There are other criteria, such as whether there've been trade publication on you or you've been cited because you published and people are looking at your work. So basically, the O1 is generally for people that have advanced a little bit more in the field, but it's there. If you're not quite there, then you might want to look into just doing an MBA or doing an additional work education in the US. Why? Because if you're entering at the master's degree, you might be able to do some practical training at the same time as your master, or you might do a new bachelor and then obtain practical training at the end of your studies, or at least after the first year in part-time training. You should also consider VIE. So on the US side is J1 visa, which is interns. Intern visa if you're currently studying, or trainee visa if you're stopped studying more than 12 years ago. I don't have a slide on it. I just thought I would just point it and finish on that. Why am I talking about J1? Because it's a way for you to learn how things happen in a US company. And even if you're pretty advanced on your field abroad, you might learn some elements, cultural elements, some way of working in the US. And so it can be a nice in-between. It's generally less expensive for the company to get someone on J1. It's usually for younger individuals. So if you're an end of career person, I would not guide you towards a J1. And the training part can be 12 to 18 months depending on the field. So a lot of companies sometimes start you on a J1, see if you work out, and then consider you for maybe an H1B, maybe an E2, maybe something else. And at the end of the day, when all of those options have run out, you need to look into permanent residency. And so I think that's what Mary was describing. You have diversity lottery where you can get the green card straight away. There's family-based options. And then on the employment side, companies have to go through something called a labor certification process, which is quite timely. So if you have to go through that route, you need to think about it and talk about it with a company fairly early on in your process. There are other options, but that was not the main point of the presentation. So I think I'll stop there and pass it on to the next person.
Thanks, Eglantine. Now we're going to open the cultural specificities section and listen to the experience of our two graduates, Charline and Gregory. So Gregory, your turn.
Thank you. So obviously you just received some great overview of the job market and the different options that you have in terms of visa to live in the US. But let's talk about some interesting experiences that we had. We had to go through living in the US. I think what's very important for you to understand is that even if you think that we know what's the American culture because we watch Netflix, we watch TV shows, movies, there's still like a big difference between Americans and French people. That's very important to point out because you'll be surprised over time that to realize that the way we handle situation could be very different. And one of the main concepts I like to use to describe how Americans and French people can be different is like the peach versus coconut concept. Usually we say that Americans are very nice, and then it's very uncommon to see like someone in the US that is very not friendly. So usually, Americans are considered as peach, meaning like they're very friendly, very soft at the beginning. So it's very easy to get like relationship with people, but long-term relationship and meaningful experience could be a bit challenging. As opposed to that, French people can be considered as coconut. We're more tough, we're more difficult to be open to people. So it takes more time for us to be open. But once the coconut cracked, that's when we start being more like friendly, more open to long-term relationships. So that's very important to understand that, because even in the work field and in companies, you'll notice that. I've been working. I worked in a company for 9 years where there was no European. 90% of the people were coming from the US. I haven't met anyone who had who was not very friendly. And when you start in a company in the US, everyone will make sure that you feel comfortable. You're in a very nice environment, so you can perform correctly. So that's very important to understand that. The relationship with your managers will be a bit different as well. I feel that in France, for example, like there is a very heavy top-down relationship with your managers. Well, in the US, the managers will be respected by the team only if they participate to the work that has to be done. I mean, you'll see many situations where you'll get invited to meetings with like senior leadership. Personally, I've got invited, even being younger, I got invited with like CEOs and CFOs of large organizations to just brainstorm on some ideas on how to solve a problem, which I think is quite different from France, because in France, usually the manager is just going to give you like some instructions on the work to be done, while in the US, you'll be part of a decision process, I would say. From like a behavior perspective, I think it's important to understand that in the US as well, like you'll see people like start early in the morning, but they also finish earlier than France. Most of my coworker, most of them start in the morning at 8 in the morning, while like I know in France it could be a bit different, where people start like maybe 9:30, even 10 in the morning. So that's a little bit different. Obviously, people in the US, when they're at work, they work, meaning that they don't take like long breaks that we have, for example, in France. You know, when we love taking long breaks for lunch, for example, when we go out for 90 minutes, having a nice, you know, like going in on the terrace, spending time with our colleagues. In the US, it's very different. You're gonna feel it could be sad, but I spent probably my last 12 years having lunch in front of my computers. So that's what's going to happen to you if you move to the US. Just be ready for that. Let's move on. So in the US as well, I think it's important to understand. As a French person, you know, you want to move to New York. This is part of the American dream. After 12 years in the US, I was quite surprised to see that a lot of opportunities are not just in New York. You have to be open to other economic hubs, other big cities in the US, because you'll see like in every single big city in the US, you'll find at least 5, even maybe 10 big corporations, big headquarters in every single city with a lot of like jobs available, which is quite different from France, because obviously in France, everything is more centralized. You're going to see a lot of jobs in Paris, in Lyon. In the US, it's more spread, and every city has could be quite dynamic. Marie just told you about the job markets right now in the US. There is like quite of a landing of the economy, but even though the job market is more fluid than France. It's in France, you'll see people could stay 10 years, 15 years within the same company. From my experience, people tend to stay, I would say, 3, 4, 5 years in the same company, and then they move to another challenge. That's something important to understand, because that creates more opportunities for you in the US. So that could be something good, but at the same time, I mean, you need to understand that the relationship with the people that you're going to build could disappear very quickly. As a recommendation as well, as someone who's been working in the US for 12 years, obviously, maybe at the beginning, it's easier to target European companies, but I would not, forget US companies in the US. I think as a French person, you know, you're going to get graduated from a great business school. You're going to be trained to some techniques and to some behaviors that are very important. And I guarantee that you'll have you're going to have a role to play in US companies as well. So don't feel shy. After a while, maybe you start with European companies, but you also have a great skills to work in US companies as well. Obviously, EMLYON alumni is a great network. There's like a lot of people in the US in every single country. You can use those people. Obviously, LinkedIn could be a great way of introduction. Many people reach out to us through that network, so don't be shy. And again, I mean, if you have any question, you can let us know.
Thanks, Gregory. We are now going to hear Charlene.
Yes, thanks, Gregory. To go back to what you said in terms of targeting US companies, I think I would say the opposite, actually. I think we have very small chances with US companies. So a few advice from my 6-7 years of experience in the US. Just to give a little bit of background that I might have forgotten to say before, I started in the US right after I graduated to EMLYON. So I actually never worked in France. I wanted to go to New York City. That was my dream, and I did everything I could to make it possible. So I started with a J1. I did actually 3 J1, started as an intern while all of my friends were having CDI in Paris and living the big life. And then I moved to an H1B, the visa that we just had some more info on. So actually right now on H1B. Going back to the learnings that I have, I think one of the things that I want to emphasize is the importance of being ready to start at the lower level that you would expect. Going back to my own experience, I started as an intern, making very little money in a very expensive city, at a job that I was not necessarily very interested in, but I thought it could be a good opportunity to have a step in the US. So really have your expectation low, because in the US, the good thing is that you can go up very quickly. So you can start as an intern, and in 3, 4, 5 years, maybe being at a manager, director level role, which you wouldn't see in France. Second advice, I think what matters is in the US more than anywhere else is your attitude more than your diplomas. Of course, it's very important to have a good diploma as a EMLYON, but you have to show that you're hungry and that you really want to get the job, that you're ready to do anything that it takes to land the job in the US. You have to be in competition with a lot of people who have US citizenships, who have a diploma from a university that people actually know about because it's in the US. So you have to show that you have something else. You really have to work on how you reach out to people, on LinkedIn, when you reach out to alumni, because we get a lot of messages from alumni, and we also get messages from people from other schools. So really target the right person and with the right message. So that's the second advice. What else? There is also something that I wanted to say, which is the job at will, which means that in the US, I saw a few questions in the chat, but I don't want to answer them now, but there's no CDI. So basically, you can leave a company whenever you want, but you can also get fired whenever the employer wants. So there's a big uncertainty. It's also target. So people have to be ready for that. You shouldn't be asking questions about the time that you need to ramp up and like or how does it work to have the 3 months of, I don't even know the name in French, of ramping up time, or like there's none of that here. You have to be ready to always have a plan B. So it's really an uncertain world, I would say, in the US. So just keep that in mind. And maybe last thing, I know I put a few bullet points, but it's French companies. I said it as the first bullet point, but I think this is the most important thing. For French companies or any company from the country you are from, really value your diploma, your expertise, the fact that you speak French and English, that you understand both countries and the cultural differences. When I go back to my own experience, I worked with 3 companies here in New York, and all of them had French either headquarters, a French manager, and it really makes a difference because when they see you, they see what you can bring, and they really see that you can be an asset to the team more than an American person. So target French companies, reach out to people in remote location, in small towns, anywhere you can. And if your dream is to be in New York, accept something lower, accept something in a small location in the US that you've never heard of, and make your way step by step, make your way to your ideal or dream position. Be patient. That's the advice that I have for you. And happy to answer any questions you have later.
Thank you very much, Charlene. So now, before moving to the Q&A session, we're going to hear about the do's and don'ts from our speakers. So that's basically what you should remember from them in a very short sentence. So Charlene, if you can just continue and give your do's and don'ts, please.
I'll be quick. I think I said most of them. Do reach out to alumni. This is how I got all of my jobs, is by connections, alumni, friends of friends. And my first job, I landed it with an alumni. So do that. That's my first advice. And don't get discouraged by the visa situation. It's a very complicated thing, and it's the hardest thing to live in the US. Is to get through the visa complication and a nightmare. Sorry to say that. But don't get discouraged. Find a company first, find the people who wants to work with you, and then figure out a solution with the visa. If they want to work with you, they will find a way to get you the right visa.
Thank you, Charlene. Marie?
Well, to state the obvious, obviously use LinkedIn as a way to network with people, find some opportunities. So should have mentioned that. But I would also say consider all of the possible options. And I would also say for any immigration process, the best advice that I received was to be supported by strong and good lawyers. People will tell you, you'll hear all different stories about people who've done it, themselves, have applied to the visa on their own, got a green card on their own. Every step in the way, from my personal experience, we had really good lawyers to support us. And I'm so glad I spent the money, because you cannot imagine how many bumps in the road you can get. And even when things you have like good end of sight, you feel like, we're going to get there will be bumps in the road. And again, the biggest advice I have for you is to be paranoid. Like, don't take for granted that it's going to land smoothly and easily. It's, again, my story seems pretty smooth and easy. Believe me, it was not. And I'm so glad, again, that we were well supported by great lawyers. Again, I've shared an overview of the job market in the US, and seriously, it can take some time. I know someone asked the question, like, do you really receive thousands of applications? I'm not making this up. This is true. So it might take some time. It might take hundreds and thousands of applications, but in the end, if that's what you want to do, there is an opportunity. There is an option for you. Not gonna lie, like, being an immigrant is not necessarily easy. Like, we don't, there might be some bias that are coming through, the hiring processes or things like that, like proximity bias and things like that. But in the end, you can make it work. So don't give up.
Thanks, Marie. Gregory?
Yes. Everything that was just said is correct. Moving to the US is, you have to be resilient. You're going to go through some tough situation. Just to give you an idea for myself, I've been waiting for my green card for 6.5 years. So it's a bumpy road, but obviously it worth it. And anyone who's been moving to the US, including myself, had to take a lower job to start with. It sounds like a little bit pessimistic, but where we are today is a good sign. That means that even if you start lower, you can succeed. So I think it's important to remember that. And again, it's not because you're taking a job that you feel is not interesting at the beginning that you won't succeed. My first job in a media company was, I would say, probably the worst job I ever had. It was not very interesting, but and believe me, after 3 months, I got offered another job within that same company. So you never know what can happen. It's just like you have to believe in yourself. So and it's gonna work. The other thing, and also it reminds me something. you'll be surprised. People don't know you. They're not going to know EMLYON. They're not going to know what you've been doing before. They may not know the companies you've been interning with on your resume because they're French companies or whatever. That's okay. That's fine. They're not going to know. And for example, for myself, for my first job, they asked me to write essays in English. So it's almost like I was going back to school to make sure that they understood that I can learn, I can speak and write in English. Those kind of things can happen as well. So all those things are a little bit surprising, but we're not from this country and we have to be resilient and humble. So, but it's worth it, to be honest. The other thing I would like to say, and it's don't forget to think out of the box. I'm just going to tell you a quick story. My brother found an internship. I mean, that was before LinkedIn. So more than 10 years ago, calling people from France. He made like, I don't know, hundreds of phone calls from Paris, reaching out to people in New York. And he was able to get an internship over the summer for a few weeks just by making phone calls. So again, I mean, the US are going to be very different than France. The relationship with people will be easier. You need to take benefit from that. Be respectful, but don't be shy.
Thank you, Gregory. And lastly, Eglantine.
So I think everything was said, and what Mary said, what Gregory said is basically spot on. Just be careful. It's not because everybody does something that it means that it's going to fly for you. The immigration system in the US is based on the very technical codes, on the very complicated interpretation, and everything needs to be happening at the right time in the right way. And so, yes, people can do stuff on their own. Does it mean that it's always successful? No. And even with the assistance of a good attorney, sometimes it's going to get delays. It's going to get issues. So the attorney is there to really give you a shoulder to rely on, that you're not doing everything alone. And I will say this is true for immigration, but this is true if you're an entrepreneur and you're starting your operation. Get a corporate attorney, get the right advice. The United States is a very litigious and very regulated in an odd way, very different from France. And having the right legal support group from the get-go can really help a project move from being an idea to actually being a functional company and having employees or having you as an investor. So getting the right advice is very important. I saw there was a couple of questions that I'm just going to add in my conclusion. So right now, it's mostly E2 visas that are affected for appointments as of next year. The consulate regularly opens appointments, and so it depends on the category people are looking at. There's still some things coming up, especially if you're looking at a student visa or a J visa, but most appointments are being delayed for the fall, and there's going to be very few openings for the summer. So I just wanted everybody to brace for a complicated summer. And I think that was what I wanted to add. So anyway, good luck with your project.
Eglantine, if I just may add something, I'm sorry. A lot of people think that the companies won't sponsor you for a visa just because it's expensive. I wouldn't say that. Big companies, I mean, can afford it. I think the reason why they're reluctant in hiring people from other countries is because of the complexity, the paperwork that is required, and the time that it takes to get a visa. So it's not it may not be a money issue. I mean, especially for big corporations, it's more like a paperwork and a complicated process. So I just want to make sure you got that.
Thank you, Gregory. Great. So we have about 30 minutes to hear you and listen and then answer all your questions. So Delphine is going to handle this part. We have a lot of questions already in the chat.
I'm back with the mic on. So we had very few questions. One thing before we start is, please restore your cameras if you want to ask a question. It's just much more nicer for all of us. Hakim, I see you have a question, so you're welcome to take the floor.
Thank you very much for this opportunity, and congratulations on your career achievements. My questions are mainly to maximize the learning outcome from this webinar and better position ourselves as graduates who invested in EMLYON school, as it ranks now 13 worldwide. So my first question has to do with if you could share any advice for internationals aiming to secure an internship or full-time positions with the US companies, especially regarding the necessity of the company sponsorship for a work visa. Did you hear me?
Yes,
Yes,
we
we
do.
heard you.
Oh, okay.
It's a tough question. It's a difficult question.
Yeah. Maybe you can also
It's the
tell
what?
us, like, if you just graduated, if you have some experience in France. I think it's very different depending on where you are in your career.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I'm about to graduate, and regarding my previous experiences, I did an internship in a multinational company in Morocco, because I'm Moroccan, in
I think
PwC in the.
maybe that's enough to say that you just graduated. I don't want to take too much time, but I think
Okay.
it's thank you for that. If I can answer again, big disclaimer, I'm not a lawyer, I'm not anyone related, but if you have the chance, for anyone who just graduated or who will graduate very shortly, you have a big chance ahead of you, is that you can do a J1, which is an internship visa. And an internship
Okay.
visa is one of the easiest visa to do for a company. It's quick, it's cheap. So you should apply and you should reach out to people to say that you have the availability to do a J1 visa. That works for French people, at least. I don't know for the rest, so you can do your own research on that. But that's what I did personally. I graduated from EMLYON and then I started right away with a J1 visa.
Yes, you're right. I mean, and when you raised the concerns about U.S. company, it's been tough to get to U.S. companies, even though they are located in Paris offices, because they are very selective with the candidates, and sometimes it even ends up discriminating graduates from l'EMLYON, for example, in the investment banks of Goldman Sachs. We have a manager that says, "I don't talk to anyone unless you're not from Polytechnic," and she referred to that with the next. She says, don't even bother yourself talking to me. So it's discriminating. We don't know how to position ourselves to secure an internship then.
So if I may say something on internship, just to avoid some misconception that we have from when we're in France, the internship in most US companies are just summer internship for a few weeks. So it's not the same internship, like the same meaning that we have in France when you go in a company for 6 months, 9 months, or 1 year. So you need to understand that when you apply for internship in the US, that could mean it's only for a few weeks during the summer. So that being said, Akim, on what you just said on the discrimination, I feel you need to understand as well that if you apply to a top company in the world, you're going to have top applicants for any type of schools, and everything is super competitive. New York, for example, is super competitive. It's you have no idea. I mean, you're still in school right now, but like once you're gonna get into the job market for a few years, you're gonna understand that there is competition anywhere you are. I mean, you could even if you're in a company and you've been working in a company for 3 years and maybe there is a job that you want, maybe someone somewhere else will get the job that you were targeting. So I would not call it discrimination personally. I would just call it it's very competitive. So if I were you, I mean, there is like other markets. If it's not Paris, it could be London. You can apply anywhere you want, but you need to be ready for this, especially if you want to move to the US. You need to be ready for that bumpy road, obviously.
Thank you for your answer. Yeah, I will save my questions and I'll leave the floor to my.
I'm gonna add some things though. So I cannot give personalized advice because that's legal advice. So I can't intervene on a description of a personal situation. However, generally, remember that Business France, which is an agency, right, a French agency, has programs for young graduates to go intern, basically. It's kind of, they call it volunteer. for a period of time abroad, and they help you connect with companies, whether it's in the US or somewhere else. And they are an interface for J1 intern and trainee visas for the US. So remember that if you're stuck and you're not finding a company, always look to see if there are some volunteer international position available. It's always good.
Thank
Okay,
you,
sure.
Martin. Thank you for this addition. Julie, you have a question? Maybe you want to ask it?
Hi, hello everyone. So I'm doing a VU right now. I'm in Detroit. I have a J1 visa and I would like to apply for a E2 visa. That's really difficult. I find the company, they want to sponsor me, so that's good news. But the sad news is that there is no appointment available at the Paris embassy. So my question is, do you think they are going to open more slots? Because right now, like you said, Eglantine, the next appointment is in March 2025. Second question is, are we allowed to get an appointment in the Belgium embassy or in Mexico or in Canada or somewhere else than Paris, where maybe we can find earlier slots?
So Julie, I can't answer personal questions, so I'm going to take a general pass at your question. In a generalized answer, some consulates allow for third country national processing. When we come to E2 visas, there are registration of companies, so these become more tricky to provide for relocation. At this point in time, many consulates have said no to third country processing, so it's a question of, on everyone's situation, to look at where you're located for your file right now. Is there an appointment available? What's the date? And then contact other consulate to see if it is an option.
Okay. And in your opinion, do you think they are going to open more slots in Paris or not at all because of the Olympic Games?
They regularly open slots. There are also cancellations that you can look for, but I can't give you any answer for Paris.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
We have a question from UW. You've raised your hand.
It was me, I think, Julia. Sorry, I cannot put my camera on, unfortunately. Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for your presentation. I have a question about the situation of remote working. Like, how is it approached today, especially at tech companies and also maybe in financial services companies?
Yeah, I'll take that one.
Thank you.
I think right after the pandemic, interestingly, a lot of financial services and bank companies have had a pretty strict return to the office policy. So kind of leading that trend, JP Morgan Chase was very adamant of having people go back at least 4 out of 5 days in the week back in the office. And so a lot of other companies have been following that trend. I would say, interestingly, in the tech industry, where a lot of companies were claiming that they were more flexible during the pandemic and all of that, we are starting to see the same trend. So I think as early as 2022, Google was asking their employees to come back at least 3 days a week. I don't think Amazon ever allowed. Amazon is kind of the odd one in the tech industry and being always, more strict about their internal policies and guidelines. I don't think they ever gave a lot of flexibility to their employees. I work at Microsoft, so I can speak about it. We were very proud to say that we would encourage people to work from wherever they want, that we would trust them to do their best work from wherever they are. And interestingly, I'm starting to see a similar trend at LinkedIn where we're being encouraged, to come to the office a bit more often. So depending on which role you have, right now, for me, for instance, at LinkedIn, they are encouraging us to come at least 2 days a week. So it doesn't sound like much, but I'm definitely seeing a trend where it's like, yeah, sure, we have allowed and we have hired people who are fully remote. Right now, we're a bit more strict in terms of how we're hiring, and we have a strong preference for people who are close to one of our offices. And so I can't speak for what comes next, because obviously I'm not part of those circles discussing this kind of decisions, but I can tell you that I'm seeing a similar trend, even though we haven't been, we probably haven't been as firm and strict as financial services companies, but still we're taking the same path, I would say.
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe somebody else would like to respond.
I can add something. The first question, when a recruiter is reaching out to you, the first question that you get is, are you willing to go back to the office? That every single time, that's the first question that we get before discussing like, you know, skills or experiences. So that's the first question that you get. That means that people are going back to the office. That's the trend. Overall, most companies, not just tech, but like every companies are going back to the office. So I think it's the new, I mean, we're going back to where we were before. Probably we'll have more flexibility. I mean, especially in the US where like everything is more like fluid than France, obviously. But I think the trend is that we're going back to the office, especially if you work in an industry where I'm just going to talk for myself. Like I work in a retail company. It's going to be hard to ask people who work in boutique to work 5 days a week in boutique while all the corporate people in the office can work from home 5 days a week. That's not going to work. From my experience as well as a manager, I prefer to have my team in person. So that's a bit old-fashioned, but that's I think that creates like efficiencies and it improves communication a little bit as well. So I think that's the direction we're going to.
Okay, thank you very much, Gregory. And also, just to understand better, like when you say going back to office, like do you mean 5 out of 5, or it's like 3 to 2, or how?
Every company is different. I know people are going 3 days in the office, 2 days from home. I go 4 days a week. I mean, we have to be in the office 4 days a week. Every company is quite different.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you for your question. Hakim, do you want to take the floor?
Please, yes, please. I do have two more questions.
Okay.
One has to do with when we fill the job opportunity form, and there's this question regarding to will you ever require the company to sponsor you? And either sometimes you choose yes or you choose no. I mean, what's the bad choice? What's the choice to not make? Knowing that, for example, in my case, I am not a European and I am international. All of my academic career was in different parts of the world. Therefore, what to do? Is it to select yes, I will require the company to sponsor me, or make myself a company an expert in sponsorship and deal with it? I mean, then I'm confused. I don't know what to choose. If you can answer this, thank you.
I think I can take this one or try to answer you. I think if you apply to a company that has this type of questionnaires online, it means that this is a big company. This is like a big group, big company, and you apply online and you put your resume and they have this questionnaire. In that case, I would recommend you to say yes. But if you see that questions, your chances are already very, very small. So I did try to apply to companies without saying that I required a visa sponsorship, hoping that maybe they would like me and then maybe they would find a way. I got the job, and when I told them 10 minutes later, they called me back and they said the offer is not longer available. So I would say don't spend your time trying to get that, but try to find companies that are small enough for them to want you enough to sponsor you. I mean, my personal advice is that you shouldn't, if you don't have a visa, if you're not on a green card or you're not a US citizen, there is almost no chance, and again, there's a tiny chance, of course, but almost no chance that you're going to land an interview at big companies such as big banks, you know, I don't know, like American Express, Citibank, whatever. So really target your companies correctly.
Thank you very much for answering it. And it takes us to the other question, which has to do with the conferences, with the business conferences. For example, they are very flexible in allowing the non-Europeans and the non-US people to get the B-type visa. It is for at least 3 months. Therefore, I was wondering if you could share some conferences that are at the interest of PGE MEM graduates, or to assist, I mean, physically there and benefit from being there, and maybe select some companies physically because they appreciate they say they have the culture of saying we appreciate the humble, yes, it's
So maybe
someone
I'm
can
going to
take.
jump in on B1, B2 visas just as a general concept, and then I'll let you answer if you have some suggestion on conferences. So whether you're on a B1, B2 visa or you're on ESTA and you're traveling for a waiver for tourism or waiver for business, you have to be careful that you're seeking the right entry compared to a visa. So B1 corresponds for waiver for business, and they allow for people to enter the country to attend conferences, attend meetings, generally do things that would require to visit people in terms of plans. It doesn't allow for people to work or use it as an option to actually interview. That's not what the purposes waiver for business or B1 are for. So you have to always be careful to ask yourself, when you have a visa, is your entry corresponding to the kind of visa you have applied for? So that would be my general advice.
Thank you,
Okay, thank you. It's all clear.
Jean-Louis, you have a question?
Yeah, hello, I have a question. Thank you for your recommendation and feedbacks. And I want to do that if because I have to do a last year internship, but it's a 6-month internship. And as you said, like in many offers that internship offer, they are usually few weeks. So do I have to apply for job offer like contracts to have like long internship as recommended for the validation of my diploma?
I might step in on this. So there's two concepts. There's the concept of summer internship that we were discussing, and then there's the concept of J1 visas. J1 visas for people that are currently studying or are within 12 months of graduation are called internship visa. So you would get a J1 intern visa. And so it doesn't necessarily qualify as a position, but it's a little bit different. There are two different concepts. And so if you find a sponsor for a J1 visa generally, or you go through UB France, that visa would be issued for the period of time of the internship. So I just wanted to clarify that difference. But companies in the US tend to use the word internship for very short practical applications.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Eglantine. Maybe Charlene, Marie, or Gregory, you have something to add, or we take the next question from Olga. Olga, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, sure. So first, thank you a lot for this video conference. So I have two questions for today. So, for example, if you're willing to land a career in finance in EMLYON school, I know you talked about different double degrees and opportunities that would help you to land a job in the United States. But for example, if you're interested by financial markets or investment banking, even if you should at the beginning look for a lower job compared to a job you can get in France. So as in EMLYON, we have options of double degrees with engineering school. We also can have a double degree with Ernest Leon in economics and finance research. And we also have central engineering option, considering the fact that we can also go abroad to get a double international degree with United States or, for example, UK. So how to choose the best option which would help to unlock your career in this case?
I can try if you want.
Thank you.
But this question, Olga, this question is not related especially to the US or just in general, or
rather for United States or
okay.
American companies, I would say.
So I'm just going to speak for the US. I mean, I believe, the other people, the other ones, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but they're not going to know you where you're from. They're not going to know your business school. They're not going to know what kind of diploma you have. So I think in the US, and I know it's kind of a cliche, but people value more, the experiences than the degree. Let me give you an example. In the company I was working before, the top senior leadership, none of them have done the top business schools in the US. None of them. They were all coming from like not random, but like middle business schools. So what they're going to value more will be your experiences. Obviously, a good degree will help you to get like good internship and so on. But as Charlene and Marie were saying, I think it's better to get a job first in the US, even if it's our lower level, because that will help you bet more than your degree, I think. So that's my recommendation.
And maybe if I can add something, this is exactly where the network of alumni is very interesting. I used to spend hours on LinkedIn just looking at profiles, what type of internship the people did, and then reach out to them and ask them like, can we discuss? Do you have 10 minutes that I can understand like how you went from this job to another, or do you have any advice? And if you target people who are doing your dream job or where you want to be in, let's say 5-10 years, then you will have very specific advice from them. And I really recommend every one of you to do that. Find people on LinkedIn and reach out to them. And I think, for most of us, when we get a message from an alumni, there's very few instances where we don't answer. So try to find the right way also to write it. The question is not like, hello, I want a job in your company. Can I speak to you? It's more about understanding the career, understanding, having specific questions, things like that. So it can be a break point as well. So be careful with that, but reach out to alumni and spend hours on LinkedIn. I'm doing your job, Marie, but spend hours on LinkedIn to find the right people you want to discuss with.
Right.
Thank you, Charlene.
I'm just going to add something as well, Olga. There's like some skills that are very, very, important today. For example, if I would give you one of the advice I would recommend is get an expert on Power BI, for example. Anything that is like data tools, all those things. If more than like getting another degree, if you're becoming an expert with those skills, that could make the difference.
All right.
Thank you, Gregory, sorry. And thank you, Charlene. I just shared my screen because I just wanted to show you as well that you can find most information about the alumni network on our website. And you can find here most of the people working in the United States looking at the map, but as well here on the site. So I would say, and I'll always give the same advice as you did, Charlene, try to find information on the website and to go on LinkedIn and try to get in touch. And get in touch, not saying I want to find an internship, but trying to understand what the people is doing and how I can help you understanding the market. It's pretty late. We still have a question from Alexander, and maybe it will be the last one. Alexander?
Thank you very much. Unfortunately, my camera doesn't work. The question is, I'm applying for an entry position at an American company in France. And my goal number one is to get hired but my goal number 7, ultimately to move to the United States. So prior coming to EMLYON, I had business, I co-founded and I had it for 10 years. And earlier I studied in the United States on a US government sponsored scholarship. So I'm trying to figure out now, shall I keep those things in my resume, or shall I play them down not to spook the current employer and the HR who is in Switzerland, because they need a entry position person. They don't need anyone who would be looking for further development. So this is the question. Thank you.
That's not an easy one. I mean, personally, it's hard for us to say. I mean, what could be the best recommendation on your resume? I always feel that lying is not the best option, because they're gonna find it either way. So I think it's better to be honest and explain the situation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. So Hakim, you will be the last question of the session.
Thank you very much. Okay, thank you for giving me the floor to ask again. Actually, regarding the alumni, for example, and interacting with the network in LinkedIn, over LinkedIn, and asking people, my question is how to prompt them, knowing that they don't have that much time and they know that they're not gaining anything out of me. I'm not in the position of power to negotiate. I mean, I'm there like, please, I want to find a time slot. Could you be free?
Hakim, we're not expecting anything from you. When we respond to you, we're not expecting anything from you. We're just here to help. Just maybe it's not going to be with a job or for an internship or anything, but just helping you. That for us, it's already it's already something. We're not expecting from you. There is nothing to negotiate.
And
thank you very much. Thank you, because
maybe
okay.
It's a very good question, I think, because it's I think we can get a lot of messages from alumni, and I think you have to put yourself in our shoes. Like, we're just human being. Maybe we have a role that you would like to have, or maybe we're 10 years older than you, but in the end, just be respectful. Just pretend that if somebody from your high school is reaching out to you, you're happy to help that person because you went through the same things. You can maybe help them through their careers. So just be very, very human, if I can say. We're not robots. We're not president of the United States. We're just regular human beings. So be simple. Ask something clearly as well, because we all know that if you reach out, we're not stupid either. We know that there might be something about maybe landing an internship, maybe landing a job. So it's okay also to say I'm in the middle of like looking for something. Maybe you can help identify companies. Maybe you know people. I would love to get in touch with you. Or maybe do you have 5 minutes to chat? I have a few specific questions. And then try. If you don't get answers to the 10 messages, with the same comments, then maybe it's not the right content, and you switch to another thing, and maybe it works better. And yeah, just
right. Okay, it's all clear. Thank you.
That's the only thing. That's the only thing that I would add to what Charlene said. Like, if you don't try reaching out, obviously you're not going to get any answer.
Yeah.
But there is a chance that people will not take the time. And we're all humans and we do what we can. But there is a chance that someone might pick up the phone, spend some time with you, and help you out. So it's a risk, and it's just worth doing it just from that standpoint.
Thank you. It's all clear. Okay, I will do.
Yes, Hakim.
I will add you on LinkedIn, all of you. Hopefully.
You're gonna have so many questions on LinkedIn now.
Well,
okay.
Thank you all for your questions, and thank you to our speakers today. I think we are going to the end. It's just the right time, so maybe we can get to the end. And thank you all for the questions. And you're welcome to use the alumni network and use the LinkedIn and use LinkedIn to get in touch.
Thank you.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.
Thank
Good
you.
luck.
Bye-bye.
And
Thank
thank you.
you.
And thank you again to our speakers. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you for
Bye-bye.
having us.
Goodbye.